All right, hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. We are in Acts chapter 13, and we're transitioning now, as I said, from a Jewish focused gospel to now going beyond the walls of Jerusalem to a Gentile uh, spread, a Gentile outreach through the Apostle Paul. This is going to be a fascinating journey as we go through the ministry of Paul, that how we see God takes the gospel through the Apostle Paul. Now, we also, of course, benefit from later in terms of what Paul's ministry is about through the teachings and the letters that we enjoy, that we study, read, and learn from the revelation that we glean from. As I have been saying, in the book of Acts, let's see here. Let's go to the scriptures here. I want to just do this briefly before we get into let me do this. I want to show this quickly. I think I'll do this through Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 4. I was going to go to First Corinthians. I was going to go to First Corinthians chapter 12. But I think I can make the point here. And I'm going to read this. By the way, this is the Apostle Paul. And just also Paul's, one of his later epistles. So he's much older. It is believed he is in jail here. And I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to read in verse 11. He says, and he personally gave some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some pastors, and teachers. Okay. I'm bringing this out here as we go to the book of Acts, because as we journey through Acts, we see all of these 5 ministry gifts that, notice he said that he has gave. Okay, he gave some to be. So we're going to see this in chapter 13. And look at verse 1. Says, now in the church that was at Antioch. Now I have to stop and say, boy, do I wish I was a part of the Antioch church. Remember, if when you think about churches, okay, when you think about churches, and you think about the popular churches that we know of, the mega churches, and I do have great criticism for a lot of these churches because of what they don't do. That really, and here is Antioch is a mega church. And notice, I want you to see the gifts that I want you to see, excuse me, I want you to see these ministry gifts that are in there. Notice he said prophets and teachers. And then he's getting ready to name some of them, and I'll get to those in a minute. But this is just amazing. This church that started off, I think when we was at chapter 11, when we saw some of the brethren who went to Antioch and they began to teach. They began to teach. I want to look up something here. And then this church, we see this church spring up in Antioch. And then later we see Paul and Barnabas operating out of this church. This is their home base. We are going to see that Paul will return to this church often. This is his home base. You do have um, um, I kind of lost my thought here. With Jerusalem, and it's still around this time. The Jerusalem church. The Jerusalem church with the apostles will be around during this first century up until AD 70. Now, and what I mean by that is the uh, the Jerusalem church. I mean, and so in AD 70, Jerusalem is destroyed. The Jews were scattered. They continued, as you can probably say, even to this day, but they continued scattered. The Gentile church still was growing. Okay. Now, notice he says in the church that was at Antioch, there was prophets and teachers. And again, I want to kind of focus on this because there are those who will say there are no prophets today. There are no apostles today. And I'm going to say that there's not one single shred of evidence, scriptural evidence, to suggest that what God has placed into the church, that he has subtracted. So like, for example, you see that I read in Ephesians, apostles, prophets, pastors, teachers, and evangelists. Well, if you look at some theologies, they're going to say, well, the apostles and prophets, God took those out, but they're pastors, evangelists, and teachers. Well, where did they get that from? Anyway, but I think we also need to understand that there's a lot of people today that are calling themselves apostles that are not. As John said, they're liars. Well, I put it like this, as Jesus told John, right? As Jesus told John, they're liars. They call themselves apostles, but they're not. People call themselves prophets, but they're not. And even their prophecies are lies. So watch this now. In the church that was at Antioch, there were prophets and teachers. And then he says, Barnabas, who is called Niger. So Barnabas, and I'm sorry, and then Simon, who is called Niger. All right. So very interesting, because I want you to see, let's take a look at something here. I meant to do this earlier and did not. Niger, of course, is African. Now, and I just kind of want you to see this. Now, Barnabas, and let's Barnabas, as we're going to see, is getting ready to be, his hands are going to, hands are going to be laid on him to be an apostle. But here he's identified as a prophet and or teacher, or one or the other. So Barnabas, then Simon, who was called Niger. This is an African guy. Lucius the Cyrenian. This guy is Greek. Okay, Greek. Greek, or even modern day Libya. Okay, and then Manon, a close friend of Herod the Tetrarch. And then it says, and Saul. Now notice this guy who was now get this, a close friend of Herod the Tetrarch. This is the dude that just killed James, right? This is the dude that killed James. But he's a believer. Manon, he's a preacher. I'm sorry, he's a believer. And not only is he a believer, but he's a prophet or a teacher. Now, Luke doesn't tell us which is who is which here. So now, notice this. at the church of Antioch. They operated, they were members, and they operated as prophets and teachers. So then we said Saul here, Saul of Tarsus. Remember back in chapter 11, Barnabas went, he went to Tarsus, and he brings Saul back to Antioch. They operate a relief ministry, taking up an offering, and then they delivered it to Jerusalem. And now they're back at Antioch. He says, and as they were ministering to the Lord and fasting, the Holy Spirit said, set apart for me Barnabas and Saul for the work I have called them to. Then after they had fasted and prayed and laid hands on them, they sent them off. So in other words, here is God. You start off as a prophet or teacher, and then God now calls them into the office of an apostle. And that's word sent off. So that would be the word, that would be the kind of textbook definition of an apostle. That they are sent off. Okay, they are sent off. And I can say what is sad to me with a lot of churches is the lack of genuine. They play a lot of church. They have church in ignorance. I mean, man, I would love to have been a part of this church, active, where God was truly moving. Okay, and not only that, but notice this, because I'm going to say something here, because a lot of people, we play a lot of games. I've been a Christian for over 47 years, and I could tell you in all of that, it's just usually one church after the other. You see where people that we play games. Okay, let's see here. Oops, I think I lost my feed here. Okay. Let's go back and let's see. Okay. Let's kind of go back. All right, let's see if I can get this back up here. All right, let's see if I can get this back up here. I don't know if I'm back live. Let me see. Okay, I'm back live there. Let me see here. I'm not showing myself live here on Facebook. Okay, let's see if I'm back live. All right, I guess I'm back live, guys. I don't know, I'm kind of not liking this program here because we have these frequent interruptions. No, that's not what I was looking at here. All right, so let's do this. Let's do this. No, it says it's ended. But I'm not showing live here. Where's it live to? Let's do this.